Here's a story at fox59.com entitled After 3 Near-Death Experiences. This man's mission is to comfort dying veterans. It's written by George Knapp. Well, I wonder if it's the George Knapp. And the author begins, what happens to us when we die? Scientists say physical death is the end of life. Religions believe our souls are immortal. But where we go depends on what we did in life. One Southern Nevada man believes both sides are wrong. Writer and speaker Denyon Brinkley says he has seen the other side at least 3 times. Brinkley was a star athlete, U.S. Marine, and a successful businessman, not very interested in spiritual matters. But that changed in 1975 when a bolt of lightning struck a telephone pole, traveled down the phone line, and slammed into his body, melting the phone he was holding. Brinkley said, "It went into the side of my head above my ear. It went down my spine. It welded the nails of the heels of my shoes to the floor. It threw me up in the air. I see the ceiling. It slams me back down. A ball of fire comes to the room and blinds me. I'm burning. I'm on fire. I'm paralyzed." Brinkley says he left his body, floated along with the ambulance as it raced to the hospital, and watched from above as doctors declared him dead. He said 28 minutes later, he awoke in the hospital morgue. During those 28 minutes, Brinkley says his consciousness traveled through a tunnel where he encountered a spiritual being of light and underwent a grueling replay of his entire life, as seen not only from his own perspective, but everyone who he'd ever encountered. Something he says was extremely humbling. Quote, "I saw my entire life performing a 360-degree panorama. I missed nothing. You know how many hairs were in the nose of the doctor who pulled you from your mother. You know everything there is from the time you open your eyes. You have complete cognitive awareness, no doubt about it. And that's all happening at the same time. No doubt. Then you watch the same life from a second-person point of view, as if you were your own best friend. You can see how silly, how funny, how stupid it was. But it's one of your best friends, you know. There's no judgments, just looking. And then you literally become every person that you ever encountered. And you feel the direct results of your interaction between you and that person. So no one gets away with anyone or anything." End quote. And then in a flash he says he was back in his severely injured body in the morgue. It took him 2 years to be able to walk again. He didn't tell many people what happened, and when he did tell his family, they didn't believe it. But in the same year as the lightning bolt incident, a Georgia physician, Dr. Raymond Moody, wrote a book called Life After Life and coined the term near-death experience, or NDE. Dr. Moody and his book were pilloried by medical colleagues, and by 1977, he was financially strapped, despondent, and ready to quit. Then former bully Denyon Brinkley met Moody and became his staunchest defender. In 1989, during open-heart surgery, Brinkley died again, and once again said he visited what he perceived to be the afterlife. Brinkley wrote a book, Saved by the Light, which became a runaway bestseller, led to television appearances, and was even the source for a made-for-TV movie. Skeptics and debunkers came after him, disputing biographical details and arguing that NDEs happen because the brain is dying, not because people are visiting heaven. Leslie Kean, a journalist who has written extensively about near-death experiences, says there is evidence that human consciousness exists independently of the body and that it survives physical death. In many NDEs, similar to Brinkley's, she writes, people are able to accurately describe what was happening while their brains were dead, when they had no ability to see or hear anything. Kean told Mystery Wire in an earlier interview, there are many cases in which the cardiac arrest is happening with a doctor present. They're documenting the fact that there is no brain activity. The case of Pam Reynolds is another extraordinary one, where they can't possibly have consciousness, and yet they do. They're able to go out and report back things that were happening in the environment, things that they heard, things they saw around them when they had absolutely no brain activity that we can detect. How sensitive are those instruments? Brinkley, who later had yet another NDE during brain surgery, says he's happy to take on doubters, including religious leaders, about what happens when we die. Brinkley said, if I didn't go to hell in the last 4 journeys, nobody's going to hell, okay? So when you learn you don't die, and when you learn you're a spiritual being, you're not going to go to hell. That's enough to inspire you to change. Brinkley put his beliefs into action. For decades, he's been counseling terminal patients. Specifically, he's counseling his fellow veterans, assuring them they have nothing to fear from death. He has spent tens of thousands of hours at the bedsides of the dying. He has been with more than 2,000 people as they passed. His passion led him to create a program called the Twilight Brigade. It works with the Veterans Administration to try to ensure that no military veteran should die alone. A defiant Brinkley, hobbled by a lifetime of serious injuries, knows he has helped thousands of people who were facing death, whether science or religion believes him or not. Brinkley added he does his talks, quote, because nobody dies. It never happens. It's not a part of the nature of reality. It's not. End quote. The Twilight Brigade program that Denyon set up with the VA is basically inoperative now because of the COOF. During the pandemic, veterans' hospitals cut most physical contact between seriously ill patients and members of the public, including family members, and the counselors from Twilight Brigade. Denyon says he is not sure when or if the program will resume. In the meantime, he says, a lot of military veterans will die alone. For any members of the audience who do not know, this is George Knapp interviewing him. So it is the George Knapp. Excuse me. You have changed the lives of millions of people with your public presentations and the books that you've written about your amazing life. Can we start with the first near-death experience? What were you doing in your life as a career and how this experience changed you? What you were doing in your life as a career and how this experience changed you. Denyon Brinkley. Well, I grew up as a tough guy in South Carolina. I was a macho sports guy. Religion wasn't a big deal to me. And I was basically a jackass, a typical Southern redneck, and all the things that go with that. And then I served in the Marine Corps. And in the course of that particular period, there were many goings-on in the world of adrenaline-driven individuals. We grew up, it says, and we grew up, we owned grocery stores. And I would buy and sell old antique cars and restore them. And I was going about my business. But in all those other aspects, I was really grounded. And then one day in '75, I was talking on the phone with a friend, and I heard the thunder. And I told Tom I had to get off the phone. And he said, "What are you afraid of, a little lightning?" And I said, "Yes." Lightning came down the phone line. That was when we had phone lines. It followed the line and came into the house. It went into the side of my head, above my ear. It went down my spine. It welded the nails of the heels of my shoes to the floor. My vision came back into focus a little, but I wore welder's glasses for a year because I couldn't handle life. I was completely paralyzed for 6 days, and personally paralyzed for 7 months. And it took me 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. And in the course of that, I had what is now known as a classic near-death experience. In the whisk of a 28-minute period when they said I was dead. Because when they brought me into the emergency room, it said patient unconscious, patient not breathing, no EKG. That pretty much covered it. I don't know about any of that stuff, George. Because from the time the ambulance got there, the phone was melted. Oh, I rewrote this whole thing because it's so poorly written. That's right. Let me see if I can find the reading. Probably in here. Yes. We'll go to what? When are we going to go to what phrase? EKG will go to. That should bring us right to it. Text. Lightning. That's the one. Wish I'd read my notes on this. Format word wrap. Close enough. Find EKG. But I lifted out of my body, George. Right here at this point, I'd like everybody who's going to this issue of what's happening and being afraid, and everybody's scared to death of death. I'd like to reassure everybody that what I'm telling you, you can trust to be true. And why I say this is that you know as well as everybody that I have been dead so many times, it's like a comedy routine. So then the first time, I lifted up out of my body. I was not on fire. I was not burning. I could move, and I could see. And I was watching all the things that were going on. They put me in an ambulance. And I went with my body because I thought it was important that I stayed with it. I was completely disinterested in it, though. That world I had just left. Other than Sandy, who I was in love with. Other than that, nothing mattered. And so I'm watching the paramedic, and I'm over his shoulder. And he says, he's gone, he's gone. I thought, gone where? Okay, I'm still Danny and I'm still me. I'm just in my energetic body, which I've never looked at or paid any attention to at all. When he said that, I could feel movement over my left shoulder, and I saw a tunnel. And I started down this tunnel. It was moving whether I was moving or not. And it was like taking layers off of me, like an onion peeling away. I could tell that probably cynical, skeptical, anal retentive personality disorder, which is my basic personality. When you're peeling those away, you become lighter. becoming more fluid. And you come to the end of the tunnel. And when I got to the end of the tunnel, I understood being in scary situations in places in my life, because my life took me to places that were scary. And I'm always trying to acclimate. I looked down at my right hand. It wasn't there. But as I focused in this blue, silvery, sensational place, the hand appeared. It's like when you put your hand underwater. It looked like my fingers were longer. But it was a glove of shimmering essence to reinforce that I still had a consciousness of a body, that it had to be reaffirmed and reassured that wherever I was, I could relate to my body. I now know that that's the reason 45 years later, when you look at this and you realize where this has taken me in my life, you do a lot of analysis, you do a lot of study, you pay attention. After this happened, when I got up to walk again, I became a hospice volunteer. And I've been a hospice volunteer for 42 years. And I have had more than 34,000 hours at the bedside. And I've been with more than 2,000 people going from this world to the next. And I can tell you this. There might be people who know more about the death experience or the life experience than me. But at the bedside, there's nobody who knows more. And I've been dead 4 times. Struck by lightning, a death experience. Lightning did so much damage inside of me. Open heart surgery, a near-death experience. That was 13 years later. 7 years later, brain surgery. And then 20 years later, open heart surgery again. At the age of 68 years, with an aneurysm under the aortic valve. And my last near-death experience.